In 1936, archaeologists discovered a small clay jar near Baghdad. At first, it looked completely ordinary. But inside the jar was a copper cylinder, and inside that cylinder, an iron rod. A structure almost identical to a modern battery. There was only one problem. The artifact was over 2,000 years old, which means ancient civilizations may have discovered electricity before modern science even existed. And when researchers recreated the device, it actually worked. This is the mystery of the Baghdad Battery. For centuries, we believed human technology evolved in a straight line. Primitive tools, then machines, then electricity. But every once in a while, history uncovers something impossible. A machine hidden beneath the ocean. A crystal used to navigate impossible seas. And now, a device from ancient Mesopotamia that may have generated electricity. If true, it could completely change our understanding of the ancient world. The artifact was discovered near Qujut Rabu, just outside modern-day Baghdad, Iraq. The region once belonged to the Parthian Empire, a civilization that ruled the Middle East nearly 2,000 years ago. The object itself was small, just over 5 inches tall, made from clay. But inside, archaeologists found something unexpected: a rolled copper sheet forming a tube, and at the center, an iron rod. The top had been sealed with bitumen, an ancient form of asphalt. To some researchers, the design looked disturbingly familiar, because this combination of metals closely resembles a simple electrochemical cell. In other words, a battery. The theory was surprisingly simple. If the jar were filled with an acidic liquid, like vinegar or fermented grape juice, the iron and copper would react chemically, producing a small electric current. Not powerful, but measurable. Enough to generate around 1 volt of electricity, which raised a shocking possibility. What if ancient people had discovered electricity 2,000 years before modern civilization? Scientists later recreated the artifact, and unbelievably, the replicas actually worked. They produced electricity, real electricity. And suddenly, the mystery exploded. But if the Baghdad Battery truly generated electricity, what was it used for? One theory suggests electroplating, a process where electricity is used to coat one metal with another, like applying a thin layer of gold onto silver. Some ancient artifacts appeared unusually precise, almost too advanced for their time. Could electricity explain it? Others proposed religious purposes. Ancient priests may have used small electric shocks during rituals, creating what believers interpreted as divine power. Imagine entering a dark temple 2,000 years ago, touching a sacred object, and suddenly feeling a mysterious shock. To ancient people, it might have seemed supernatural. But there was another possibility, one that made historians deeply uncomfortable. What if this was only one surviving piece of a much larger lost technology? There was just one issue. No wires were ever found. No ancient electrical devices. No machines. No clear evidence of an electrical system. And many experts remained skeptical. Some archaeologists argue the artifact may have had an entirely different purpose. Perhaps it was simply a storage container for scrolls, or a religious object unrelated to electricity. Others point out something important. Just because a device can produce electricity doesn't mean that was its intended purpose. A modern recreation working in a laboratory does not prove ancient people understood electrical science, and that changes everything. But this is where the story becomes truly strange. The Baghdad Battery is not an isolated mystery. Across history, Scientists continue finding ancient technologies that appear centuries ahead of their time. The Antikythera mechanism, a mechanical computer lost beneath the sea. Roman concrete that survives longer than modern concrete. Greek fire, a weapon whose formula vanished from history, again and again. The ancient world seems far more sophisticated than we once believed, not futuristic, but far from primitive. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Perhaps ancient civilizations were not technologically inferior. Perhaps they simply understood the world differently. In recent decades, researchers built multiple replicas of the Baghdad Battery using copper, iron, clay jars, and acidic liquids. Most experiments successfully generated small amounts of electricity. Some even used several jars connected together, increasing the voltage. But even then, the power remained extremely limited. Not enough for machines, not enough for lighting cities. At least, not in the way modern imagination likes to believe. Which means the truth may lie somewhere in the middle. The Baghdad Battery may not prove the existence of advanced ancient electricity, but it may reveal something equally fascinating. That ancient people discovered scientific principles we assumed belonged only to the modern world. Today, the Baghdad Battery remains one of archaeology's greatest unsolved mysteries. Was it truly an ancient battery? A forgotten experiment? A religious tool? Or simply a misunderstood artifact? No one knows for certain. But buried beneath the sands of Iraq, humanity may have uncovered evidence that history is far more complicated than we imagined. Because every time we dig deeper into the ancient world, we uncover another impossible technology and another question we cannot answer. What else has history forgotten? If you enjoyed this investigation, subscribe to History Investigator, because the next discovery might be even more impossible.